Senator Harrington, will you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You remain standing just for a moment of silence. Thank you. Roll call. Hey, Representative Bay? Here. Representative Cannon? Representative Connor? Here. Representative Harrington?
here.
Representative Morgan? Here. Representative Howard? Representative Finney is excused. Representative Petrie is also excused. Representative Smith? Representative Vincent's here. And Peter Schmidt.
Yes, coming in.
Yep. All right. First item on the agenda is going to be the county attorney's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be with you today to present in total 4 different sections of the budget, and I'll go whatever in order, Mr. Chairman, you want me to go. Okay, why don't we start with the main budget under county attorney. Find that on pages 3 and 4. We will see that this is roughly a flatline budget. We have not added anything of significance. Been some shifting in personnel. As you may have heard in other committees, and will likely hear from my colleagues in the criminal justice field, there are constant demands on keeping and maintaining personnel. And so you see those shifts. Those have to do with bolstering one part of the operation and now needing to bolster another part of the operation. So sometimes that is done through, frankly, through keeping spots open and finally trying to backfill them. So finding qualified applicants for not just for assistant county attorney positions, but also for legal assistants is a constant battle. I will say that the last 2 assistant county attorneys that left relatively recently, one went to Rockingham and one went to Hillsborough to continue being assistant county attorneys. So there is competition, I'm afraid, even between the county attorney's offices for a small pool of people who want to do this kind of work. That was the most stark line change. I just wanted to highlight that for you, but otherwise I'll field any questions in regards to the county attorney budget.
Thank you. Tom, I guess I'm looking at this, and I've never wanted to complain about budgets being flat, as you probably well know over the years, but you're looking at a budget where you've got about 35% of your expenditures weren't done after September. So you're actually spending below budget level. You're coming in flat. You've had about 6% inflation. Can you realistically perform the duties that you need at this level? I mean, are we going to keep losing people? I could assume every time you lose a assistant attorney like that, that is a pretty steep learning curve. And, you know, can we function with this? I mean, realistically.
I appreciate it, Representative Harrington. To be perfectly blunt, the way this gets absorbed is right now I have 3 cases. I've been around for a while, so I can do that until we get someone coming on who's going to be a good fit for the job, not get trained and go someplace else. That's how we've done it. And I don't mind doing that in order to present to you budgets that are within our means, whether that's sustainable in a longer term fashion. I don't know, but I've been the county attorney elected official since 2008, and that's how I've tried to balance these things. And I also hasten to add that the commissioners did upgrade the pay scale with your folks' blessing. I was greatly appreciative of that, and we've just simply been lapped again. One of the people that left, they got a $10,000 bonus just for signing on to that office. It's just not something that this county can do. And frankly, I don't think we should be doing it. The same thing is happening in our police departments, where wads of money are being thrown at folks to jump ship. In our small towns, I was just meeting with one of the chiefs yesterday who trained someone, put them through the academy, and they got lured away by a place that can throw $10,000 or $15,000 at them just for switching departments. That's really unfortunate. So we have addressed it because you've been wonderful yourself, just about raising this every 2 years, 4 years. But we've just been lapped again, and we'll have to make some adjustments in the future. I have to come back to you and ask for to look at a different scale for how we pay assistant county attorneys.
That's fair. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the question.
No, it's been answered, been addressed. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, so if you folks want to flip a page, we have the domestic violence unit. So this, historically, this had been a physically separate unit. It's now been co-joined with the rest of the staff here at the Superior Court building for some period of time. These are the folks that are going routinely to the circuit courts and doing a steady diet, if you will, of domestic violence cases. As you may have gleaned over the years, and I just had a chiefs meeting on Wednesday where we reaffirmed this, the chiefs are really reliant on us continuing to do these kinds of cases. They require a lot of wraparound services to keep victim survivors engaged in the process. And the police prosecutors just simply don't have the bandwidth to be able to take these cases. So we continue to do them. We're glad that we're doing them so we can provide some more significant victim witness services to these folks than they would normally get in the circuit court. But as you can see, again, this is a budget that, thanks to more of a leveling of maintaining staff in this division, I'm pleased to present a budget that once again is pretty close to what we asked for in 2022.
The other thing, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just wanted to mention that because we do it as a county, as a community, we're eligible for $150,000 grant that you see reflected on the budget page of the yellow book. So, whereas if each town or city had to do it, they don't have the volume to be able to apply for this kind of a grant. And I think one of the reasons why we get the grant is because we're telling them that we're covering a region and we're covering it with consistency. And that's what sometimes doesn't happen, that there's inconsistencies amongst communities when everybody does perhaps things a little differently. And that's allowed us to continue to get that $150,000.
The one other thing that you see in these this budget is the Family Justice Center. We do have the director is part of the county family and it falls under my umbrella. The Family Justice Center is located in the Rochester Community Center, and it provides greater support to persons who have victim-related needs, such as getting civil legal services. So it's not all, in fact, it's very little of it's prosecution-based, but it's police services, helping with civil services for getting housing, which is a big problem for folks who are, and their kids who are victims of crime, getting restraining orders if that's appropriate, all those other things. We're trying very hard to re-engage with local religious leaders, because we know that there are so many religious communities around that want to help and are offering help. And so getting them to come and be a resource if that's the route that people choose. One of the things also that I've done, and we'll talk about that more under Child Advocacy Center, is we have direct prosecution services in the Rochester Community Center. This has been something that's been very important to me. Crime is not localized and centralized in the Dover area. So having a place that I'll talk about more under the CAC within the Family Justice Center for families to come to for prosecution services specifically. It's very important to me, cut down on those commutes, make it more convenient for folks in the more northern rural communities. So that's one of the things that falls under this budget as well. You will see that the big change really is that there was a drop in that staff line. That's because one of those staff members is now funded through Haven. Haven happens to be co-located. That's the domestic and sexual violence peer advocacy service. They have taken in the case intake person. We only fund the director, which is really always the model of a family justice center. It's not supposed to be staff intensive. It's supposed to be a space where staff from other agencies go and give holistic joined care to a client. So we're actually veered back into the true model of what a family justice center is, which is maintaining that space and having users go to that space and meet the client rather than sending the client to several different providers. So this is a good positive change, and we're very happy with the partnership with Haven, who were willing to take this role back under their auspices. And we all agreed that that actually made a lot of sense for a lot of different reasons. So that's really the biggest, I think, change. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions specifically about the domestic violence unit and family justice center part of this budget.
Just a comment, you know, in the past 6 or 7 years, the change that the county has done to help people out is just unbelievable with things along the line is dealing with families and so forth. It's really changed over 10 years. It's changed drastically for the better. It's just my thoughts.
Same thing. For advertising, it's zero right now, but should not be zero in some years. What does that mean? What kind of advertising is that?
Advertising in previous years had meant putting out flyers for open houses and such like that. So we've really, you know, because that line existed under some old grants, we don't really need to report that out. It really just your photocopying expenses. And in this instance, since that is also zeroed out, it's probably simply falling under
Fees and outside
fees and
service,
outside services. Thank you.
as well as training.
So that all got lumped together, Representative Bay. When we were under a federal grant, we really had to meet all of that out very specifically. Thank goodness we don't have to do that anymore.
I know that the county administrator had seen
Right.
asked these questions, but whenever it's zero for 3 years, I can understand that, for example, the waiver, the health insurance waiver might come in some years and not in other years. But if it's something that would be expected to moving forward be zero, should that line item just be removed?
Yeah, and we'll remove it next year.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll remove it next year. As long as, you know, we constantly apply for grants. As long as the grant we apply for doesn't make that requirement, we just zero that line item out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you answered the question, but I'm looking at your $50,000 drop in the Justice Center staff,
Yes,
and then the decrease in the domestic violence attorneys. And then your support staff and investigators up 20 grand. Is that your balance of personnel?
that's right. That's important. Exactly. Thank you.
The other thing, Representative Horrigan, is that and I'm sorry, Tom, if I'm jumping in.
No, please.
When particularly the smaller police departments in the northern part of the county are having a difficult time retaining staff, they don't have time to pursue the investigations in the domestic violence program. They barely have time to patrol the streets. So when the county attorney's office saw the opportunity to hire a retiring domestic violence investigator from Rochester, who spent pretty much his whole career doing this investigation, it made sense to move the staffing around because he could do first of all, he'd be free just to do those domestic violence investigations. But secondarily, he could do them with much greater efficiency than a patrol officer who isn't trained for that, who isn't specifically trained for that purpose. So it made sense to help the smaller communities by shifting the personnel around, but still not costing the county any extra money.
Thank you.
Representative Harrington, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you for trying to make this quick. I guess the overall budget with that adjustment, we talked about picking up Haven that makes up for most of the change. There's been so much publicity, you hear it all the time, domestic violence, domestic violence, domestic violence. Is it safe to assume based on this budget that we're not seeing, at least not a big increase in that in Stratford County?
You know, we're still trying to figure out where exactly the line between regular crime and the bubble of pandemic crime is coming. And I will say on the Superior Court side, we have worked tirelessly to finally chip away at that backlog of cases that just sat around in 2020, 2021. The circuit courts are a little more backed up. I will say for Superior Court, we're finally now to a position where when you get arraigned for a new charge, you're getting a trial date, a jury trial date within 9 months. And that's where we were pre-pandemic. So that's sort of my meter for where we are. Circuit courts were not there yet.
So it's too early to tell.
Super backlog in the circuit court.
And one other quick question, where does the funding for Haven come from?
Funding from Haven, they're a 501c3, and they get a lot of.
Okay, so it's
donations.
charitable donations.
Yeah, they service both Stratford and Rockingham County. They're a very big organization.
Thank you.
And that's why having a partnership with them was pretty
Good idea.
extraordinary.
They also get state shelter funding.
That's right.
All right. Good.
Okay, folks, so then
Before you proceed, we got one more rep coming in. Let him, please, hurry up. And I'll-
thank you. Thank you. So we'll turn to page 6 then, Mr. Chairman, if that's good with you. Sure. Child Advocacy Center. So this is a center, again, it's actually right next to the Commissioner's office. For those of you who might not be familiar with what this is, under the Attorney General's best practices, victims of sexual and domestic violence, or really of any complicated case, the best practice is to do a forensic interview, which is an interview conducted by someone who's been trained to make sure that they're asking appropriate non-leading questions. We don't want to suggest anything to folks. And so this occurs at the Child Advocacy Center, where we've been doing these kind of interviews since back in the mid-90s. Stratford County was ahead of the curve nationally in establishing a service like this. So this is what that budget is about. I'd like to highlight that the CAC, or the Child Advocacy Center, gives through this family support specialist position that has been added, some aftercare to families. These are some of our most vulnerable families in the county who are coming and using these services. So really basic things that we might take for granted, but that some families don't have access to, which is has your child had a follow-up pediatric appointment? Have you, the mother or non-offending parent, what kind of services are you seeking for your own well-being? You know, really working with folks to try to make sure we can have as helpful an outcome for this family as possible. And that's totally separate from the actual prosecution of any of the crimes. So these are families who, again, are touching the county at a vulnerable time. We want to make sure that we're giving them the best services or referral to the best services. This, of course, is working in lockstep with the Family Justice Center. What I referred to earlier with the Family Justice Center also is we had installed the same video equipment in the Rochester location that we've always had here in the Dover building, in the Superior Court building. Several months ago, I instituted a new policy where if the family, if their location is closer to the Rochester location, then we are going to use that space to do those interviews. I've spoken to the chiefs in Middleton, Milton, New Durham, Stratford, Farmington. I lived in Stratford myself for many years. I know what it's like to have to drive to Dover for everything. And so, I've spoken to them, would that be, help with the burden of just always having to come to Dover for everything? And they said, we really appreciate it. If you do that, I said, well, I am doing it, so I'm glad you agree with me. Because I think it's the fairest thing to do for our families who don't come to Dover every day. So that's one thing that I'm very glad that we've been able to start doing. And we've had a really good response. I think that as public officials, if we can treat people the way we want to be treated, if we were walking in their shoes, that's how we could treat them. And so this has been something that has been a long time in coming. Again, I have to thank, at least indirectly, for those of you who weren't elected, but some of you have been around for a while and you've supported these initiatives. You supported putting that equipment in that location. And so I say on behalf of those families who have already been benefited by it, thank you for, coming up with, I know it's probably sound a little crazy. We have all this equipment in Dover, we're gonna duplicate it in Rochester. What's the purpose? But it's already showing dividends for the folks who, it's easier to get them a cab from Milton to Rochester than it is to get all the way down here to Dover and back. Thank you for your commitment to what we're doing. The flip side of this, again, what's the importance of forensic interviewing? Well, one of the things that occurs is we have people who come in and do these interviews. They're, obviously referred to by police, sometimes by DCYF. But we've done many of these interviews where, because they're so thorough and detailed, we've done the follow-up and determined that there actually wasn't a crime that was committed. So these interviews, the way we do them, because they are fair and neutral, not geared towards we're going to get this guy or this is a prosecution, but really geared towards finding the truth. We've actually been able to exonerate people over the years, not have them sitting in jail as innocent and not proven guilty yet. So that is something that I think is really important. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty, and we need to make sure that we're doing police work as thoroughly as we can. So this tenor adds to that by the services that we provide on the actual prosecution side of things. So it really is a win-win. We're helping families, and we're also protecting the rights of people who are simply accused of crime. Are there any questions about?
I just have one question. What retirement? Can you just explain that one, please? Is that a fund that is preparing for retirement?
It's a state retirement system.
Okay, so a state retirement system, because I see it jumps up. It went from in 2022 is 23, and then it went. That's a different line. I apologize. Okay, thank you.
Just a quick thing, because the CAC is certified, on a federal level, we receive $85,000 in grant money towards what you see here, and that's again reflected on the revenue page. Also, I made a mistake when I said we receive $150,000 in revenue from the domestic violence program. It's actually $180,000. There's a separate $30,000 grant that we get through the state to assist with the prosecution of those cases. So it's actually more than what I had mentioned earlier. Yeah, it's a good mistake to have.
Right.
It's on two separate lines, so I picked it up when I was looking for the other funding.
So thanks to the work that gets done at the CAC, we have a national accreditation, and that actually brings in a small amount of money each year just for keeping up with standards and such. So we do everything we can to try to make sure that if there's a pot of money or a pocket of money out there, that we're picking something out for Stratford County.
Any other questions for Child Advocate?
Just one more. Okay, I know it's only office supply. But it's, I noticed you overspent what was approved. And you're requesting the same thing again. Do you need to up your office supplies, or did you make a unique purchase?
I think it's a reallocation, and I think you'd find that it was my error. That some of the supplies that were purchased at the county attorney's office were charged to this account by mistake. So that's been rectified. So it's my error, and I apologize. I usually try and catch those things when we issue the quarterly budgets. That's obviously one that got by me.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
appreciate the question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
So we're on to page 11, medical examiner 4150. And this is County Administrator Bauer and I joke that this is the most morbid part of the budget process. You all get tasked with along with us trying to guess who's going to die and what services they're going to need. As you know, we have, for any situation where there is an untimely death, which means it's someone who's dying outside of a doctor's care, or a doctor simply won't sign off on the cause of death. This falls under the medical examiner's line. There are several different ways that the medical examiner will deal with this. One might be a full autopsy, which of course carries with it significant medical costs. Others might be a phone consult, which is much less, and others might be just going to the scene without an autopsy. So there's sort of a sliding scale based on the circumstances under which the remains are found. So we try to guess. We've gotten pretty good at guessing.
Over the year.
So it's a terrible thing to be right or wrong about, I guess, but this is a ballpark guess based on what we've experienced through a couple of things, the aging of our population, as well as dealing with what's been a drug epidemic ever since I started here myself in 1999. How that has shifted into synthetics and what that means, and what the next trend might be coming down the pipe.
And I think there's been a difference in, if you look back a few years, there was a lot more autopsies done in what would now be considered an obvious overdose. So I think that those are being handled differently now through an investigator as opposed to a full autopsy, based on totality of circumstances. Where when the overdose epidemic really began, several years ago, a lot more of the deceased were handled through autopsies, which are obviously much more expensive.
That's a really good point. The medical examiner that's a two-edged sword, because the medical examiner has cut back on saying, just because this is a suspected drug overdose death, we're going to do a full boat autopsy. That's helpful for budgets. It's not so helpful when I'm trying to explain to families why an autopsy when done and why a criminal case can't happen unless I make a special request to the Attorney General's office. So sometimes what looks like a good thing on a bottom line can be difficult for our citizens to understand. So when I do ask for those autopsies, I'm trying to be very careful, thoughtful about what, if I'm ever going to override the medical decision that we don't need one. I try really hard not to do that. I try to trust the people who are in medicine. That's not me. I have a different role, but once in a while I do have to do that.
Question. Just on that subject, I was going to ask the question about that. And when you get into what seems to be an obvious overdose, is it possible to just do like a blood test to determine what's in there without doing any further autopsy than that? If it's, if the fentanyl level is high enough, you realize that's what killed them.
And that's what we've been asked to do. Obviously, if you're accused of a crime that could carry that kind of penalty, a defense will be, what else was wrong with the person who maybe hasn't been to a doctor in 10 years, hasn't taken very good care of themselves if they've been in the throes of addiction for a period of time. So it's,
And so if someone is being charged with selling them that, okay, then I understand. All right, thank you.
Yeah. So
Very complicated. In other words.
we do our best to work with what we're given. Yep. Thank you.
And that's why his people are on call 24/7. They rotate the call because those decisions need to be made pretty quickly.
Representative Warren, just one question. Who owns the medical examiner?
State.
And we rent the service, and we pay for the service that they
We
provide.
pay for basically the contracted services of assistant deputy medical examiners, as well as the MD, the forensic MDs who are doing the actual autopsies in Concord.
Thank you.
And that's set by statute.
Representative Bay.
And Chairman, so the first two lines of the budget, there's a significant change. So can you let us know? Like the maintenance director and the maintenance person.
Oh, I think that would be
A different subcommittee.
Oh,
I just have 4150 for you today.
Any other questions?
I want to thank all of you for your questions. Some of you I've worked with for a number of years, and there are a couple of new faces. I want to thank you for your work on this subcommittee as you listen to my colleagues. We are a unified criminal justice family here, so I work closely with the sheriff and his personnel, the superintendent, and the director of programming, who's yet to come in. We're constantly on the phone with each other to make sure that we are delivering fair, just services, not just to the alleged victims of crime, but also the people who are accused of crime. And I do think you're going to hear through my colleagues a great track record of producing those results, which are being emulated around the state, and sometimes other states coming to look at what we're doing here in Stratford County. So I want to thank you for the support that this committee has always given to us as we traverse on through the thicket of criminal justice.
It's the best county in the state.
Awesome job.
Am I biased?
Not at all.
Okay.
That's what
Thank
we
you very
work
much.
towards.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you all very
Oh,
much.
Before you leave, I have a question. I attended an event yesterday noon in Concord at the Holiday Inn. And one of the Stratford County law enforcement officials, Rochester officer, Officer Root,
Yes, Carl,
who got the law enforcement officer of the year award from the and I wanted to bring it up especially because perhaps one of the rest of you were at the event, but the reason I bring it up especially is because this individual was honored for his work in apprehending I don't know whether it was a single individual or a gang who'd been involved in thefts involving, and perhaps you could speak to that a little bit in terms of the prosecution, but some of the other members of the committee were not there. And it was very enlightening to hear the considerable success that Officer Root had with regard to putting an end to this crime spree, really, where they had hit, I think, a market basket, maybe in Dover, and then very shortly thereafter, similar facility in Rochester. This is where Sergeant Root. So perhaps you could just speak. Is that something that you're going to be prosecuting?
yes, yep. So organized retail theft is extremely difficult. Sergeant Root worked really well with multiple layers of prosecution and investigative agencies. I don't know if you folks know his background. He was, I think for 19 or so years, was a New York City police officer. He thought he was going to retire up here and be nice and quiet. Well, we had news for him. We put him right to work. So it's a well-deserved honor.
6'5", so
He stands out whether he wants to or not.
Watch
And that's before he opens his mouth. Right.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Sheriff's Office. Dispatch.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll speak to the sheriff's office. I brought Major Board who oversees this. Speak more to it along with Justin, the director. So I'll start by saying, obviously, the overtime line was absolutely destroyed. And I will start by saying,
Excuse me, which section are we talking about?
I'm sorry. I don't know if you want to start. Okay, so
Is this
4140 007, is that what we're?
So we're going over to 41.
0.007.
Oh. Okay, got it.
Okay. And that was majority, it was majorly due to the fact that we took over the Farmington schools when they were in dire need of help. I'm happy to say that, Chief Orlando's been doing a fabulous job over there. They're now back in their school, and we pulled back and we utilized our deputy back in Frankfurt where we need him because ICE is picking up again out of Burlington. So we are currently, and a second part of that is Frisbee. Obviously, as you know, prior to us even having a conversation with Frisbee, I brought the chief of Rochester in and had him speak with the staff there because they want to know why their calls for service weren't being answered when nurses were being harmed or, there was a theft on property, or they had a huge homeless issue in the ER. So, once the chief said, hey, we're down 13, 14 officers, I mean, now they're doing better, but they were down then. We can't do it. The sheriff's office is in a better place to help us out with that. We'll take any major issue calls to assist them, but it's nice to have them on the property to assist you guys when needed. Since we've been there, there hasn't been one assault against staff. There haven't been any issues with the homeless population. Our deputies, I've directed them, if someone comes in there, they want to be warm, we can give them a ride to the homeless shelter from there. And we currently are going to be there probably until the end of this year. We have one deputy now. We're down to one deputy because they're fully staffed almost with their security staff. So once they become fully staffed, we're pulling out of there also. Again, my goal, I don't know if you guys remember my conversation last year, but it wasn't to go around and take over regular law enforcement functions. It was to be an asset to the local PDs, just like the POP unit. This year alone, I have some real numbers here from 2022. So for the year, for 12 months, the POP unit has seized more drugs, guns in Stratford County alone than the state police special unit and also any drug unit in the state. So we have seized in 2022, 24,852.98 grams of fentanyl. Meth was 5,200 grams. Cocaine was 5,000. Marijuana was 929 grams. Pills, Percocet, stuff like that, 3,800. Steroids, Suboxone strips, 1,300. And we seized with unilaterally, because the feds obviously have to take their cut, but we took off the streets here in Stratford County $298,000 in $298,213 in cash, illegally being used. So that's just in our county alone. We've taken over, vehicles, homes 3, firearms 19 with no serial numbers. So those are ARs and shotguns. I'm a firearm donor. I believe in protecting yourself, but these firearms are not traceable. So that's a problem.
For the new representatives here, explain the money side of it.
So the money side of it, so this $298,000, the feds takes a certain percentage off the top, and then all the agencies involved. So we work very closely with Rockingham County Sheriff's Office, FBI Safe Streets, DEA. Everyone gets a cut of that. So it's like $60,000. Stratford County might walk away with about 12,000, 13,000 bucks. So, and that can go back into us buying equipment that our guys and girls need to continue doing this job.
Thank you.
So I'm just going down here now. The new equipment line, I'm working with Mr. Bauer and the commissioners. We do need some new equipment, but some of those things can wait, and we're going to work with them and possibly revisit that later in the year, especially when we get the money back from those asset forfeitures, which we're hoping to get back late summer, and we can utilize that money to buy the equipment instead of putting it in the budget, because that's money from the feds that we can use to get those things. So.
And that'll have to be identified through the executive committee,
Yeah.
just so you know. It's not like we're doing
No.
that independent of the delegation.
So does the executive committee dictate what percentage? Who gets what percentage? Because it seems like the people who
do the
make the
work.
Cs should have more money. I'm just
Yeah,
wondering, maybe we can think of.
Yeah, I think it's federally controlled,
Okay.
because the feds do contribute personnel
Right.
to what we're doing, so. A lot of this is federally controlled, it's ironic that the quantity that Sheriff Brave had indicated of drugs that were seized, if they were sold, far outweigh the $298,000.
Yeah.
You'd be, into the next digits
Yeah.
above that. So it's, but obviously those are kept till the criminal case is done, and then they're disposed of. So, but I actually had side thing, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I actually had the opportunity I was invited by the major not that long ago to see a seizure that just occurred the night before, you know, and how the evidence was managed and how the drugs were laid out. And hey, I know it's been a long time since I've been a police officer, 30+ years, but it's still, it's astounding. You know, the quantity of drugs that was seized and just that day before. That was just a chance.
And I will add to that, the most important thing is that's in our county. If we're not doing work in Lawrence or Farming or Framingham or Worcester, like the old drug task force, that's us focusing on our community and using the resources that we have to do that. And then we do the same for them. Like in Rock County, we'll go to Salem and help them out with their thing. So that's kind of the workhorse we have going now, and it's been working for us.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Education and training,
Yes, sir.
the significant drop there.
Education and training, yes, so that was due, I mean, we didn't spend a lot of that, that was due to a lot of the courses being canceled due
And
to COVID.
so we need to make up for that.
So, yeah, because now through PSCC and through the legislation, each deputy sheriff, each police officer now has an extra 8+ hours, which that comes to dollar amount because we've sent up for training to pay for that. So we figured that we're gonna be spending all of that this year.
Okay, but you had 30,000 last year and you only reported 18,900.
Going down.
Yeah, it's going down to, and I think you'd find that some of the training also was, we needed to do in order to maintain our certification. We're the only freestanding dispatch center and sheriff's department, there might, I take that back. There might be other sheriff's departments that are CLIA certified.
No, we're the only one.
We're the only ones, okay, and the CLIA certification is helpful in a variety of areas. It not only demands that your policies and procedures be, you know, up to date, but in the rare occasion, and it's been non-existent under the current regime in past, in terms of any lawsuit that's brought against the sheriff's department for something that might have occurred, the fact that we're CLIA certified is a great piece of defense. Because it means that an outside agency has come in and looked at what you're doing and says it's top notch. It meets all current standards. So there was a certain amount of training that occurred last year that won't need to be repeated. So that's why it went down from 30 to 18.
And also to add to that, a lot of it came from the Chiefs Association where they voiced this opinion because also like a town like Farmington or Milton, they can't send their officer out for 4 days up to PSCC. So a lot of it now is remote and free through PSCC's new system called Benchmark. So the officers can sign on right there and do it. So that's why that price went down. The initial cost, that was gonna be at 30,000, but they cut that through the legislation that you guys did. So,
Thank you.
cool. Yes, sir.
Did you have any involvement in this incident that I asked the county attorney about? Where officer got awarded by the Retail Merchant Association Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. For his involvement.
I think if we did, it would have been a phone dump or two, but I don't think we had anything to do with it. Like, off the roof got.
The investigations unit works very closely with, well, any of the agencies, but as far as forensic work and investigative help, we help all the agencies
Thank you.
on a daily basis.
Any other questions?
Justin, you guys, dispatchers.
Well, I'm a both.
Yes.
After speaker, that we can do so. Okay.
If the speakers would all introduce themselves, please. For the new members, thank you. And for the old members, who forget.
Thank you.
That's what only myself I was speaking of. Hold on.
Mr. Chairman, Justin Bellin, Director of Communications and Emergency Management, Sheriff's Office. The next one we're on to is the dispatch center budget.
Perfect.
Page 10 then.
Be page 10 in your yellow. So, give you a quick overview of the dispatch center where we stand today. Um, we dispatched, police, fire, and EMS for every town, with the exception of Stratford, Lee, Barrington, and the 3 cities. For Stratford, Lee, and Barrington, we do dispatch police, but not the fire and EMS side. The dispatch center is also wrapped into the fleet accreditation. So our dispatchers have to be held to the higher standard, just like the law enforcement personnel does. This year, we're able to bring on Milton Fire as another, we'll call it a customer list. So now all agencies in the town of Milton are dispatched by our dispatch center. It helps greatly with coordination.
Quick question on that. When you bring on like a town like Milton versus maybe a larger town, the price difference definitely, or is it figured out by amount of call volume?
Currently, the pricing is based on population.
Oh, population, right?
And then if, say, an agency has radio systems we need to maintain as part of the, we have a fees we add for that, for county personnel maintaining their equipment.
Thank you.
So the only actual cost that the communities pay is the capital cost. And for all of the communities that Justin talked about, the total capital cost that's contributed every year is about $93,000. But of that, we pay for a lot of their software and things that, and because it's cheaper for us to do it as a community than it is for the individual community to do it for themselves.
Right.
So we collected through what's called the Chief's Dispatch Fund, and then we collect it that way and then pay it out of that fund. So that the operational costs of the dispatch center is borne by the county. And it's kind of in compensation to the towns for the fact that the cities get more of the county services at the jail and more of the county services at the nursing home. And in order to kind of compensate for the towns, and we've studied this not recently, but a number of years ago to ensure equity, the towns get the benefit of the dispatch center and the cities don't. So it's kind of a quid pro quo for the cities getting them services again at the jail and at the nursing home.
Thank you.
Question on that, with regard to taking on a client, the communications end of it, you mentioned software. Do you have a responsibility or do they have an obligation to change the software to become compatible with what you've got? How does that?
Currently, we're actually in a decent situation where all agencies in the county are using the same software platform.
Okay.
And we are actually the hub for everyone but the cities currently for that record management system and dispatch software.
Okay, so you're all communicating without any problem, all on the same system?
Yes.
Do you maintain any maintenance responsibility for that?
We maintain those systems here.
Okay.
The one other thing is, as you know, from those of you that have been on the delegation, you know that the county has invested $3.5 million in upgrading the radio systems, of which at this point, there's no intention at all about attributing any of those costs to the towns. That the county had some capital money, which the executive committee, as I'm sure Representative Harrington will remember, the executive committee allowed us to repurpose to the radio system. We also did get an earmark allocation of about $750,000 from Congressman Pappas. We just committed about $900,000 in ARPA funds that we could do. Also, the governor has committed $3.5 million can only be distributed to the 10 counties for emergency equipment. And we intend on not all, because it's a 60-40 match, not all the counties are going to apply for that.
Right.
So we're guaranteed at least $350,000. However, it's our belief, because all the counties aren't, the way the nursing home money was allocated, we believe we'll get a much larger share than the $350,000. That grant is due, the February 28th, so we're hoping, that with the money we've already paid to the vendor, which was Motorola after a bid process, that we've paid them, I'm sorry, I'm doing the numbers in my head, right around, we've got about $1 million, a little bit more left to pay, which isn't due until the project's completed. And we're also applying for, that was just decided last week. We've also are going to apply for that emergency grant to upgrade the equipment for the towns. Right now, and I'm not talking here specifically about radio equipment, talking about ancillary equipment like computers in the cruisers and things. If we're gonna spend $3.5 million to enhance the radio system, which we had no choice but to do, because there was 15% of the county was dead spots.
Could I just interrupt? Now, are those dead spots gone now? That was going to my question.
They will be.
They will guarantee us 95% coverage.
That's about as high as it gets anywhere. But now we're at, we were at 85% or honestly, we thought that was generous. We thought we were below 85% from our estimation. But this is also our opportunity to focus more on the towns, to make up for the fact that the cities tend to get, more services again to the nursing home and the jail. So the county elected to invest that $3.5 million into the radio system, as well as we're going to be applying for a COPS grant for an additional $500,000 which is part of an earmark through Senator Shaheen's office to upgrade the equipment, to offer a free upgrade of equipment to the towns who participate in the dispatch center. And we believe we have strong belief, because we're approaching this not as Dover or Rochester or New Durham or wherever. We're approaching it as a regional approach, which is why we got Pappas's money. There was 200 something applications for Pappas's earmark money. And we were one of the 5 entities, I think it was 5 entities that got our $750,000. And it's because our approach was regional. So we believe that we'll be in a good spot for the $500,000 because we're again approaching the upgrade as regional, not for one specific community. So that when you look at how those grants have been distributed on a federal level, regional approaches tend to be looked at more favorably.
Thank you for that, Ryan. Representative Harrington.
Thank you. On the budget, I noticed in the amount of dispatches for what I assume salary has decreased. But the overtime has gone up 17%. Is this because you simply are losing people that you can't replace, or is this a plan that somehow it's cheaper to pay overtime and hire more people?
No, big problem we're facing right now is actually getting people on board and retaining them. Similar to what you've heard from others.
Because as you'll hear me say later on, substituting overtime is a good short-term fix, but in high-stress positions, which I imagine, I've never been a dispatcher, but I can imagine when you're moving people around in a fire or something, it's gonna be very highly stressed. Working on excessive overtime is not the solution. So.
We are having trouble with hiring and retention. It's a very competitive market with very few qualified candidates that every other public safety agency right now.
And one other question, if I can follow up, the fees in outside services, there's a pretty big increase in that. Any specific reason for that?
Yeah, the antenna.
Yeah, a lot of that is increases due to site rent. As we expanded our radio system, we expanded our footprint. They charge us more for more equipment at the sites.
Although Dover was nice, they gave us
Elstree.
where is it?
The city of Dover entered into an agreement with us to use their tower on Long Hill.
For free.
In exchange for just serving as a backup dispatch center for them, which.
So we, as part of our CLIA certification, we have to have backup dispatch centers. In case ours, goes down.
Gotta have something else.
So, it's a quid pro quo. They gave us free space on their antenna for. It was nice to sign that agreement.
Can I add one thing, please?
Yes.
Sheriff Graves, what is the timeline on the project? I would like all of you to be, I want to invite all of you there for this. This is a big deal. The Stratford County is probably going to be here for the next 15 years. I know we're pretty close to it.
We're shooting for Q2 acceptance testing, so it'll be,
Which is-
we'll be signing acceptance for midsummer.
One of the biggest holdup now is we need to put an antenna,
Tenerife Mountain.
at Tenerife Mountain. We need to replace the antenna. So we need to pour the concrete, and this really is, even though it feels nice out this last few days, we haven't had quite the winter where we've taken the risk of pouring the concrete to set the antenna
Don't
out.
make that mistake.
We were ready to go before the December 23rd storm, and that scuttled the construction up there.
So we're gonna have to wait until the weather breaks, and that's one of the biggest.
That's on
bigger-
Tenerife.
Any other questions for dispatch? Okay, thank you. Moving right on.
You're on, Chris.
You're on.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Brackett. I'm the superintendent of the Stratford County Department of Corrections. In front of you is Department of Corrections account number 6100. If you look, the bottom line is that there's about a drop of $444,000 in my budget this year. And that is through what I think is effective management of being fiscally responsible in some areas, realizing savings from long-term planning projects that the county has done. Just before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, I wanted to identify that on my fees and outside services line item, that's 6,100,229. You'll see an increase of 31,268. It's actually an error. I apologize that I didn't catch it before we got to the subcommittee. It's relatively flat. I believe I'm asking for 162,000 some odd dollars. So there's an additional $30,000 that will be deducted from that.
So we'd ask the committee to cut that $30,000 out. So that as the budget continues through the process, we won't have to make the adjustment again if the committee cuts it out now.
Is the bottom line correct?
No,
No, the bottom line.
yes, sir, that needs to be adjusted, that
Yep.
$30,000.
Yep.
Apologize for that, because I didn't catch it either.
You can do that again a lot.
Chris and I were communicating while it was going on. We actually just caught it now, so I apologize for that.
One of the most significant decreases that you're going to see in my budget is reflected in the correctional staff. The reason why that's done is not because I don't want the correctional staff, it's because I don't think it's prudent to fund those positions after historically not being able to find qualified applicants to work. I've said it before in the executive committee, I'll say it here in the subcommittee. Nobody wants to grow up and be a corrections officer. Finding a qualified corrections officer is an exceptionally challenging pursuit. One that we're not going to stop doing. However, we feel as though if we were to cut the spots that I have historically not been able to fill, I might be able to place it in other line items to be able to utilize and reflect more accurate spending. Thus, you will see a significant increase in my overtime, and that's really where that shift has come. Representative Harrington, I know your stance on overtime, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. If there was a way in which I might be able to come up with an alternative so that my staff only have to work overtime when they want to, when they can sign up for it versus having some forced overtime. I would happily do that. And we've gone through different iterations. We've spent money on advertising through fees and outside services to see if we'd be able to attract qualified applicants. We have incentivized people to work volunteer overtime. We have gone through significant pay increases, which have been sanctioned through executive and full delegation meetings so that we can entice people coming in. There's a significant concern that I have if I just start throwing money out there to get people to come in, because that doesn't always bring in the type of individual that you want, trying to establish a level of decorum inside a correctional facility. I don't want it to just be the money that brings people in, because if I do that, then we're gonna have, we could potentially have additional expenditures in different line items where we need to have Tom and his team defend us on behaviors that's there. So it's,
I realize we've had this conversation before, just for the new members of the committee, this has been an issue that's going on for quite some time. And I'm not criticizing, I understand you're trying to do the best you can, but the concern here is that if you're having people working in a prison as guards, and if you're having somebody working, 60, 65 hours a week after week, and something bad happens, well, first of all, we don't want something bad to happen, but if it does, a prisoner gets hurt, a guard gets hurt, they look and say, well, the person responsible for that had been working excessive overtime for years. There's going to be a lawsuit, we know that. So maybe it's time, and Peter, you jump in here, maybe it's time we try to do something where we form some type of committee or something to help you out, to see what's available out there to change this, because, I mean, you're just running into a brick wall. I mean, you come up the same thing every year, it's always, you're trying, you don't want to hire a bunch of people who don't want to make the situation worse, so you're forced to put people on overtime, and especially when it's forced overtime, then you get a person who's grumpy to begin with there.
Yep.
So I don't know, maybe I just throw that out as a suggestion. Maybe it's time we try to give you some additional resources on the idea of planning for that.
I would be more than happy to listen to some suggestions or work, work with individuals to come up with some creative solutions. I'm always willing to listen to some of those ideas. I can tell you that just this week, I've instituted a mandatory overtime for all certified corrections officers that's working over at the jail, myself included. If you need me between the hours of 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. on Sunday morning, you can catch me over at the jail because I'll be working overtime over there. But I'm just saying, your concerns are not falling on deaf ears. I wholeheartedly agree with you, and to every extent possible that we can alleviate some of that forced overtime, I'm willing to explore.
We have, worked in cooperation with the union. I am pleased to say that every union contract is settled. We have of the 4 unions that we have no pending, we have no unsettled contracts. So, we've been trying to work in conjunction with the union too, because it's easy for us, it's probably easier for us to say what we think they should want, but it isn't necessarily what they do want. So, we work through the union in the best way we can for them to be the representatives of the rank and file officers, and to try and make adjustments in salaries, working conditions, benefits, everything that they feel their officers want, which we hope will retain those officers. So I think we do have a core group of senior officers.
Yes.
I think the officers that we tend to lose will go to PDs. One officer who I know quite well, because she is a good friend of my daughter, works for Summersworth as an example. And that's just one example, and then one that I know, I'm sure Chris can give you a litany of people who start at the correctional level and really want to test the waters to see if they want to become police officers. So that's a piece of the group that we lose. It's for that purpose.
But going right along with that, Ray, when you get people like this and you say, the overtime, I've had a lot of people work for me and you tell me you're gonna work overtime, it's, oh, great, extra money, and everybody's happy for a while.
You're right.
Then after a while, the extra money becomes not so good. Then it becomes, why the hell aren't you home once in a while? I don't care how much money, we never see each other. And then then you lose those people.
Yeah.
And then you start all over again with somebody else. And of course, there's the training expenses and everything else. Like this, what I'm thinking, we've got to come up with some type of a longer term fix than this, than just forced overtime.
Yes.
So.
Yep. To Ray's point, I just, I'm sorry.
Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, are we in communications with the other counties to see whether they're experiencing exactly the same situation, something better. Obviously, there are regional differences, all kinds of other aspects involved. But are we exploring every avenue of creativity, innovation, whatever?
I,
Try to address this.
Yes, I have. So I sit as the president of the superintendent's affiliate. And every month we get together and we talk about issues related to operations of a county jail. We inevitably always talk about staffing. There's one county that's fully staffed, and that's Belknap County. And that's because they operate with 5 people during the day. That's how many people they need to operate. And they've had those people for quite some time now. There are some innovative concepts that other counties have tried to do. They have significantly increased their hourly wage. However, their hourly wage goes along with a less competitive benefits package than what we offer here at Stratford County. So it's a catch-22, or it's a 6 in one, a half dozen in the other situation, if you will. So there are issues that are plaguing every single county with the exception of Belknap as far as staffing goes. And the state prison is exactly the same, whether you're looking at the Berlin facility, the Concord facility, the women's facility in Concord as well. They all have the same, they are all experiencing the same staffing shortages. People just don't want to work. And if they do want to work, they don't necessarily want to work on a back shift or on the weekends or on holidays. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. My question is, what type of wages or hourly wages are we paying these officers?
So an entry-level officer at Stratford County Department of Corrections makes $21.09 per hour. That entry level is additionally compensated because they will be working on a back shift. So there's a shift differential as well as a weekend differential when they work on the weekends. It's minimal, but it's more because you're working a back shift.
$3 2 years ago.
Pardon me?
We added about $3.
We added $3 a couple of years ago to make us competitive with primarily Rockingham and Merrimack counties and Carroll County. But it also took us from the second lowest to mid-level corrections compensation within the state.
And where do we stand now?
With the new contract.
With the new contract, we are, I believe, Rockingham pays more and Belknap pays more. But there are other than that, I think that we're fourth. But I don't know what other contracts the other agencies have negotiated.
Right.
So.
I know the governor announced a 10% increase and I understand it's just in his proposed budget. And there's a long way to go before that budget's approved, but he's put in his budget a 10% increase for state employees. So I presume that's gonna go to the prison also.
Yes.
So, that's the kind of market we're in, but you're right. We want to be the dog instead of the tail. And so we've been trying to work with the union so that we're not at the tail end of things, that we're, more midway through the dog as opposed to, because our benefits are better. But you know what? Kids don't care about benefits. Because they're invincible. I'm 22 years old, I'm 25 years old, I'm 26 years old. I don't get sick.
Kids necessarily not married. It's the ones that have been in the longer that feel.
That's
That's
absolutely
right.
right.
And I didn't mean that. I'm just talking in generalities. So, in the past, when the labor market was more robust, we used to be able to take our niche out of the market, because our niche used to be, a good benefit package. And I think that's why we retain some of our more senior people now. It's just it's the younger people that come in, work it for a couple of years and then leave, because they really don't care about the benefits. They haven't had, they might have never had to go to the doctors in that 2 years they're here, as an example. So we're trying to,
You also have to recognize that going into a jail every single day takes a toll. Some people,
It's like being in it.
it is, it's widely recognized that if you work inside a jail, and this was when the retirement was 20 years, it's like serving an 8-year sentence. That's what it kind of breaks down. And so, if you think of it in those terms, it's just a tough place to work. And some people can handle that toughness. Some people struggle with it, and some people recognize, this isn't for me. And and every single one of those people have value. And I recognize that, perhaps maybe some people come in because, look, I started because my father said, Christopher, you get a job with insurance. That's why I started working in corrections. And so those are the reasons why some people might start, and then they just feel as though they might be able to find something that's a little bit better somewhere else. And it's not always the money. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's that, I just don't want to go in and listen to, be around. It's just an inherently sad place to work.
Well, I have to admit, in all honesty, I have stolen your line. I use it to a lot of people. No one ever grew up wanting to be a corrections officer.
Yeah.
The other one thing I wanted to mention too about here is that you'll also see on the revenue, almost an increase in revenue of just short of $1 million. What's happened is, we're back up to levels of boarding of inmates
Pre-pandemic then.
pre-pandemic. And that's, you're 100% correct. I'll just let Chris tell you about our relationship with immigration.
So we house Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and we house immigrations and customs enforcement detainees that are a medium level or higher. So low level offenders are typically the offenders that get a lot of attention because they're seeking asylum from a dangerous country, things like that. And that's the only reason why they're in custody.
That's not who we house.
Medium to high custody offenders are individuals who have been convicted of crimes, and almost always they have been ordered deported as part of their plea that they have entered into to serve their time. So these are individuals who have already come to the conclusion that they are going to be deported at the end of the sentence that they serve. Now, I fully recognize that some of those people might necessarily have made a decision 9 years ago, and the country that they're from might be in shambles at this time. And so there might be a need for them to seek asylum. But those are the individuals that we have in custody, those that have been convicted of a violent offense, a felony level offense, or a misdemeanor level offense. And so what has happened over the past month is we've seen a multitude of individuals seeking a recalculation of their good time because they're first-time offenders in the Bureau of Prisons. And so those first-time offenders are subject under the Second Chance Act for them to have a recalculation of their good time so that they can determine if they get out earlier. We had 20 people do it back on February 1st, and then we had another 20 people that did it again just last Friday. And what happens is they're recalculated, they're released from BOP custody, but there's an ICE detainer that's on file. ICE takes them into custody, and then they look for a place to put them. Now, the options are Stratford County or Plymouth County down in Massachusetts. Well, Stratford County is a one-stop shop largely for ICE detainees. And so we say, yeah, if you need a place to put them, as long as we can accommodate through our quarantine process, you can bring them to us. And so our numbers have gone up about 22 people over the past during the month of February. And I believe that of the 40 that we've seen, there's about 160 or so that are still yet to be heard up at the Federal Bureau of Prisons in Berlin.
Can I just add for the people that haven't been here for a while, this, and the jail has been built, what, 20 years now? And this
2004.
this was actually part of the design almost back then.
Yes.
And this is not an insignificant amount of money. We're talking with the estimating for next year, it goes back up to previous revenues, $7.5 to $8 million a year from the feds for jail income. So
That's correct.
this is a lot of money we're talking about.
And that development, that design has a lot to do with what County Attorney Velarde had said. We're one large group. The space that I have to place in individuals who are from the federal government and they pay us for it is largely related to Carrie Conway's ability to monitor individuals out into in the community, and you'll hear a lot more about that. But it's one giant operation that all parts are an integral part of that process. And so, you know, when it was first started, much before my time,
Regretfully not mine, right?
That's true, sir.
we're now seeing the fruits of that labor, and that really kind of brilliant forethought that if we do this, then we can do this, and then we'll get this, and then we'll get this. And that's exactly what we're seeing here.
What's our current boarding rate?
$100.
One,
$100 a day, and that's a strategic number. There are other places that get more money than that. However, if the federal government says, we can't spend that much money, go to the cheapest place. Guess what the cheapest place is?
Right here.
Stratford County.
So it's a business decision,
That's right.
honestly speaking. The second thing that we've been able to achieve is that we're the last stop for the feds. So when we have Bureau of Prison Inmates, which are your federal inmates, non-ICE, we were able to negotiate a number of years ago with a friendly sheriff that I happen to have worked with one long time ago in another lifetime. So that when a US Marshal inmate is brought to us and then is convicted of their crime, they then become in the custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. We are the last bus stop for the north for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So what happens is Maine, Vermont, sometimes Massachusetts, but mostly Maine and Vermont, bring their inmates to us until the bus comes to pick them up and distribute them in Bureau of prisons from here to New Jersey. So we will pick up 20, 30 boarders at any one time that are awaiting their turn on the bus. And that's been a real revenue producer for us. And honestly speaking, as much as you might think to the contrary, those inmates aren't really problematic in terms of their management. They like it here. We're the kinder, friendlier jail, as opposed to some of the places they've been incarcerated and some of the places they're going to be incarcerated. We offer a lot of services that aren't available anywhere else. And we've had inmates who will offer to plead guilty if they can serve their rest of their time with us. It's just because we offer the services that aren't available to them in other places.
I know it's working for me.
And I'm okay with being the superintendent of a kinder and gentler jail. And the reason why is because it makes my staff, it's safer for my staff.
Oh, sure.
It's safer for my staff, and it's the right thing to do.
Right.
So 18 years the new jail's open, we've had one correctional officer hurt in a lost time injury. One. And we since, yeah, I know. Every time I say that, I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna get the call this weekend that there's been something else, but we've only had one officer hurt in a lost time injury, and it wasn't a significant injury. He got pushed and hit his back on the counter, and he was out for about a week, and that's it. And it's because it's about respect.
Right.
You
It's not
give
an
it,
accident.
you give it and you get it. You don't, if you don't give it, then you don't get it.
You're right, Peter. Deputy inmates over that many years, it's a policy, not an accident.
Right.
Nice.
One other thing that I wanted to make note of is that you've seen a significant increase in the cost of food. It's about 92,000 of an increase. That has to do with what we experience every week when we go to the grocery store. It's passed on to us as well. Also, it has to do with a calculation. I've calculated that I anticipate my population is going to go up. If you see my breakdown, the breakdown that's provided in the packet there will show you that I've calculated that I anticipate an increase in my population going up.
So no one's allowed to say they can eat 50 eggs like Luke.
No. And the interesting thing, we are the most inspected jail in the state of New Hampshire. There's no state inspections for jails. However, because we house federal inmates, particularly immigration inmates, we are the most inspected jail anywhere. So ICE will send,
They'll send, so ICE sends typically 7 inspectors for a period of 3 days to make sure that we're doing everything that we're supposed to do. On top of that, we receive an inspection from the Bureau of Prisons, from the U.S. Marshal Service for the District of New Hampshire, sometimes from the District of Maine, as well as the commissioners come through 4 times a year, quarterly, to make sure that everything is the way in which they want it to be. So,
Representative Bay.
Yes, this is actually a question that I was asked by Representative Selig of Durham.
Yes.
Who is in the Criminal Justice Committee and
Yes.
State House of Representatives. And in the State Committee, they heard testimonies during hearings that many county jails do not provide appropriate pads and tampons to people who menstruate. And they were also told that inmates are issued recycled undergarments and sheets that are often badly stained. So the question is, if new undergarments are issued to each inmate and if funds cover pads and tampons in appropriate sizes and quantities.
So I have very intimate knowledge about this, as I testified on Senate Bill 209 yesterday, and I testified in favor of that bill. That bill is to ensure that we provide feminine hygiene products to women who are in custody. I'm happy to report that of those that testified, they cited many different counties as having problems. Stratford is not one of those counties. We freely, quite literally freely give out feminine hygiene products to those that require them, biologically require them. It's important to identify biologically require them because there are times in which they can be misused. And it's more so prevalent in the state prison than in county jails, but that is proposed language in the Senate bill that is that went in front of committee yesterday.
the other thing is we don't force them to ask. They're provided on the unit. Because it can be perceived as demeaning for our female population to identify to a correctional officer that, you know, it's time they need these products. So the products are provided, they're there on the unit for use without our female inmates needing to ask for them. Because I can understand that that's not a comfortable situation. And I was just gonna ask more about to more completely answer Representative Bay's question. And that is every pair of underwear and every pair of sheets brand new? The answer is no. But they are washed at 180 degrees. And if they are stained they're thrown out. And it's interesting that the inmates who participate in the laundry are the inmates that wear the product. So they have every incentive to throw these products out, because as you know, our laundry for the jail, our linen laundry for the nursing home, and for the Humane Society, and for Hyder House, our hospice house, and for Wentworth Douglas is done by the jail. Now, we don't do all of Wentworth Douglas's laundry, but we do their overflow laundry when they're full. They don't have a laundry large enough to manage their capacity. So we take on that, and we certainly supervise it with staff, but it's done, it's all done and folded and parsed out by inmates. So, you know, there's every incentive for them to throw away anything that's, you know, doesn't come perfectly clean.
Just curious, which line item does the feminine products go under?
Feminine products comes under other supplies, which is 239. That's 114,556. Sure.
So the undergarments are for all of us, you know, we live in an individual house. We have our individual requirements and so forth, so we use and reuse things until they're worn out or unserviceable.
Yes.
But the female prisoners, are they getting are they getting their stuff back?
Yeah, they wash their own.
They wash their own.
They wash their own
They
garments.
don't have no intermingling.
Yeah, the linen is washed in bulk,
Right.
But once you're in the jail, you wash your own garments.
In addition to that, there are opportunities for them to purchase their own items off of commissary.
Then
Now,
we're not making that mandatory.
That's absolutely right.
Let's make that really clear.
Yep.
But if for some reason, you know, what you don't like the underwear, I mean, maybe somebody likes Hanes underwear as opposed to Fruit of the Loom, or I'm just making stuff up. But we do offer them for purchase on commissary. If they
No, that
choose.
helps to understand how you do
You can also purchase, if you don't like the feminine hygiene products that we provide, there are alternatives that you can purchase on commissary as well.
But so for the feminine hygiene products that you provide, are there, an array of choices?
Array of sizes.
There is an array of choices, yes. Yep. And quite honestly, with the new bill, the Senate Bill 209 that's been offered, there's some additional things that we may need to invest in, but we have no problem investing in those things, should it be identified that we need to do so. And I've had conversations with the county administrator about that, even before we're compelled to do so by statute.
You know, a lot of the bills, most of the time when those types of bills come up, we're already ahead of the game. But if we learn something from those bills, I read every circuit court of appeal case from the whole United States. Stu Dodopoulos, who's a local attorney, forwards me those cases. It becomes case law. Now, we're not bound by some of those cases because it's not out of our district, but frequently those cases will tell you where inmates are thinking, attorneys are thinking, judges are thinking in all across the United States. I just finished, you know, I read them all, and if I think it's pertinent, I'll discuss it with Chris and we'll make a policy change.
I have a binder of cases that he sent.
I send them over to Chris. Sometimes I send them to medical. I mean, I will admit to you that I like reading them. You know, it's probably from my past, from being a police officer for 11 years. I like reading them and I learn things from them and they're fascinating to me. But the advantage is we can make changes before they become mandatory. And that puts us into a better spot.
Representative Harrington?
Yeah, just, Ray, you pricked my memory up there. Speaking about cases, there was the appeals case in Maine on people that were.
MAT.
Yeah, and so where are we at with that now? Maybe you give a little brief again, because a lot of people.
Sure, so the case that you're speaking of is Brenda via Aroostook County out of the First Circuit Court of Appeals.
Which covers New Hampshire as well.
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
All New England minus Vermont.
And that case was sent to the appellate court, and within 31 days, they rendered a decision where they affirmed the decision by the lower court. Basically, what the intent was is that if somebody was on MAT, when they went into the facility, MAT is medication assisted treatment, Suboxone, Subutex, naltrexone, methadone for substance use disorder. So basically it said if you were on that before you were incarcerated, you'd be able to continue that during your incarceration. So once that came down, we immediately adopted that because that had governance over the state of New Hampshire. We took it a step further and we decided that we were going to take a look and see if there was individuals that needed medication assisted treatment that were inside our facility. We partnered with our in-house contracted doctor who was X-Waiver certified, so that they would be able to evaluate and determine whether or not MAT was appropriate for the individual. And those that were on MAT in the county, and they might be operating in programs inside the county, drug court or other things that carry overseas. They would be able to work with their existing doctor over at Community Partners so that they'd be able to continue their MAT treatment. And so now under I think subsection 4 of 30B, it also says that we have to provide MAT to individuals that are in my custody under RSA 30B, which governs the Department of Corrections, county.
That was when you said that would be someone that came in that wasn't on it, but was addicted to a drug.
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
They could say, I want to get this treatment.
That's correct. Now, our facility offers MAT, but we don't feel as though that's the only way to treat substance use disorder. We operate a therapeutic community, which is an abstinence-based program as well. So we feel as though that having only one option for substance use disorder is not the best practice. So we have multiple different ways in which we try to address substance use disorder with those that are in our custody, whether they're federal or state or local. Any of this.
Thank you.
The one good thing that if I could call on the county attorney, that might be happening with MAT. Tom, you called me this week. You're on the committee for the opioid.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So I happen to be one of the commissioners for the opioid abatement commission, and I don't know how dialed in you folks are and the work we're doing. We're getting some significant money into that fund. It's going to be upwards of $40 million. Based on a great big lump sum, this is going to be paid out over a period of time. But there's a chance to do some real good work with this money for nonprofits. But one of the things that happened in the first 6.7 million that was allocated was none of the county's MAT programs were given any assistance. We're changing the manner in which we receive RFPs, and we're actually going to have a 2-track system, which will include nonprofits, but then a municipality track. Because we really, as we were vetting these applications, I'm sorry, Representative, we read over you. As we were vetting these applications, we're realizing that they're apples and oranges in regards to how you're comparing what a nonprofit program is doing versus what Chris is doing at the House of Corrections. So the good news is that it will be much more likely that some of our MAT will be funded through the opioid abatement commission, which is really what it was designed and set up to do, which is to relieve governments from this First Circuit case. We're compelled to do what we're doing. We feel good about it. It's the right way to treat people, but we are compelled to do it. So I think the question was asked, what if someone comes in and they've never been on any MAT before and they say, now I'm on someone else's dime, so I'll start MAT. Yes, of course, we're going to provide that because we have to, but it's also the right way to treat them if that's their election.
Because most of the time they're there because of the addiction.
Absolutely correct.
The other thing is that Harry wrote an excellent grant, to the opioid abatement committee. But again, they decided not to fund any of the counties for MAT. But we do a full MAT. And I mean, a full MAT includes counseling. It includes post-release follow-up. So we're not saying, okay, your time's done in the jail, see you later. We work with Road and is there any other entity, or is it primarily Road, which is
Road to a Better Life.
Road to a Better Life. They just call it Road. And it's in Somersworth, and we work cooperatively with them to hand off the MAT treatment once they leave the jail. So it's not like, oh, we got you squared away on MAT, see you later. We provide the handoff services, to Road. So I think a lot of jails, that's not part of the compliance with, the First Circuit, but it doesn't take a lot of imagination to know that's the next step in the lawsuit, right? And so our goal is to get ahead. So now we want to be the nose of the dog instead of the middle or the tail end of the dog. We want to, and that's part of the integration between Tom, the jail, Harry, Sheriff's Department is making all of that work.
Do we see a trend in the direction of getting off of any substance?
It's pretty early in the process. So when you get onto MAT, and I'm by no means a subject matter expert. However, when you get onto MAT, the intent of MAT is one of two things. One, it's a humane detox. It can be utilized as a humane detox, or it can be used to kind of manage the opiate dependency over a long period of time. And that long period of time can sometimes be upwards of their whole life. It can be up to their whole life. And so being able to say that we've seen an effective change of substance use disorder, I can't, I can't speak eloquently on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sorry, we probably gave you more information than you wanted to hear.
No, I want to know this.
Yeah, this is so important. We need to know. Ties right in, you want to come deeper.
Moving on to drug court.
Okay, well, Chris is here, could we just do the House of Correction laundry part?
I assure you it won't be.
No, this will be really quick.
It won't be as long,
In
so,
fact, we've already talked about it.
yeah.
We do the wash, we pay the inmates $2 an hour to fold, $5 an hour to wash.
Yep.
And that goes into their account. They can use that account for, buying commissary, making phone calls. Or more importantly, they could use it to pay their fines. They can use it to pay their child support, those things like that. So, and it goes into their account. We manage that account and they can make withdrawals from that account. If there's a court order or what we used to do in the old days is, oh, darn, Major Burke's gone because he could have verified me on this. Frequently, we knew somebody was in jail, we'd wait till they get out so we could rearrest them on a warrant that we had sitting there. Because we thought it was our job as police officers to put people in jail. And certainly I've learned, over the last 35 years, that's just dead wrong. When you're releasing somebody from jail, you want to release them so that their fines are paid. That if we can help them get their license back, we can help them get a job, then they're much less likely to return, which is what the goal is, not the opposite of that. So, the laundry, you have general linen, right? In your city of Somersworth, my hometown, my home city. And that the laundry that we do, the commercial laundry that we do at the jail teaches those people a useful skill that they can be hired at general linen. As an example.
And then the last thing under my purview is the jail industries program. The jail industries program is a program that allows inmates to do work inside the facility that would otherwise be contracted out to other entities, most likely overseas. The work that they do is vetted by the Department of Labor to make sure that it doesn't displace workers in the United States. It allows them to learn skills such as soldering, for example, but it also they can learn how to silk screen print or operate an embroidery machine. All of these skills are skills that they can turn around and utilize once they're discharged from our facility. If you've ever had a Stonewall kitchen holiday basket, chances are it was probably put together at the jail industries building. The jail industries operation is largely funded by its revenue stream. You'll see that it generates a revenue, so it offsets that operation. And the jail industries that we have here is one of the original contracts that was granted by Congress back in the 80s.
It was just before I started here. Oh my gosh, I have to think back that far. It was started in the 80s where the US Congress issued 25 licenses to ship inmate produced goods across state lines. Now, most of our work, I don't think any of our work right now goes across state lines, but we kind of needed that to get our industry certification. We're ISO certified. And so we can take on, we actually make a profit in industries. So the inmates are paid market wages for the work. They keep 50%, 10% goes to victim assistance, 40% goes towards the operation of the program. The last couple of years, we've been, of course, so busy that this industry has made a profit for the county. Although that wasn't the goal. The goal was to teach the inmates a useful skill. If I can help offset some of the county operation off the taxpayers' back, I'm happy to do it. So, that's been a good thing for us. So it's more than just the laundry, but the laundry falls under industries.
Pays good, I'll come in on weekends and fold.
$2 an hour.
And we bring in our own laundry.
Yeah.
Yeah, bring in your own laundry. That's right.
Anything else? Now, are we moving on to drug court and
Additional housing.
All of this will fall under, Carrie.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Carrie Conway. I coordinate criminal justice programs for the county. I have with me today Will Britton, who oversees our community supervision programs and community corrections. So we're going to start with 6102, which is our community corrections and mental health support budget. You'll see overall, our increases are minimal, and they're in, excuse me, the staffing area. For pay, our on-call phone is our overtime line. The case managers get paid for 1 week a month for carrying an on-call phone, and that is so we can retrieve calls after hours from police departments, emergency rooms, anyone that might come in contact with some of our folks on the streets. And then the longevity and social security. Other than that, we don't have any other increases in that budget. We are to date supervising in the community, if you look at all of our programs, excuse me, 495 people. That is up from 2021 and 2022. Currently on free trial, we're supervising 294 folks in the community. I have with me today Will, who oversees our employability program, and I want to take a minute to talk about that and highlight that program. It's we have the only employability program in the state of New Hampshire, and it's something that we've talked to other jurisdictions about replicating, just no one has done that yet. And so I want to give Will the opportunity to do that.
By the way, my favorite program.
Yes.
Thanks, Ray. Basically, it's a court-ordered program where I supervise moms and dads to make sure that they're looking for employment. They report to me once a week. They turn in job searches. They're required to do 10 job searches a week. And I just, it's about being accountable. And I give them places to that I know that are hiring. Every place is hiring, but I give them places to go that I know for certain that are hiring. And they fill out their application. They go through the whole process. I make sure that they're doing that. And eventually they're hired. I work in conjunction with the DHHS and 3 of their child support officers over there. And once they're hired, their pay is garnished and it comes right out of the paycheck. We also have
You said what comes out of the
Right.
child support?
the child support goes right out of the paycheck.
Right.
And we also have a part of our program where they can make their child support payments right here in our office. And that's been successful. So basically, we also have, court dates that we have to go in front of Judge Cross, Judge Hall, where I'm going in front of the judge saying a certain client is in compliance with our program, they're doing everything I've asked them to do, they're turning the job searches, they're eventually hired, and that they're in compliance with actually paying their child support.
Yeah, so what was happening 8 or 10 years ago is folks were ending up in the House of Corrections for not paying child support. And so we said that doesn't make any sense because now they really can't.
Like dead or prison.
That's exactly. And there's a question, honestly, a legal question about whether you can send those people to prison. And the Supreme Court has ruled that you can only send those people to prison if they purposely don't pay. Well, 8 or 10 years ago, if you remember, the economy was flipped. So we had a lot of people who were ordered to pay child support that couldn't find work. But the court was so backed up, or they didn't know they could go to the court and ask for their child support to be reduced until they found employment. So they ended up in the jail. And I'm hearing, I have an employee at the nursing home come to me and say her now husband, who had a previous relationship and had to pay child support, is in jail and he can't find a job. And so I'm thinking, well, this doesn't make any sense. So I approached, community corrections, and we started the employability program. And Carrie, how much have we collected?
So we're just under $800,000 that Will has helped collect with that agency. In 2022 alone, Will collected $57,907 for these families.
This is a question.
That's just to the office. That's not accounting for like people with it having their password garnished right from their paychecks.
Yeah.
So the number is huge.
Now, what happens if someone goes out and go through all this, you get them a job and so forth, and then they get fired because they don't show up or something like that?
Sure, that happens quite often, unfortunately. So then they'll just report to me again and we just start the whole process up again. And then I'm
always on phone calls or emails or text messages to DHHS is saying, you know, Wilburn just got a new job at General Linen. I send people down to General Linen all the time. And then they just do the whole process, they garnish their wages and we have a lot of contractors that, you
So
know.
if they work, they pay.
Exactly. So, and some people don't have garnishable jobs. That's what they make their payments right here through our office.
Great system.
Yeah.
There's currently 95 people that Will has.
Relieves the burden on the jail system too, obviously, you know, that because of the cost.
And also DHHS, you know, your state Health and Human Service Department honestly doesn't have the staff to chase these people.
Right.
And because they don't have the staff to chase these people, that means the kids, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. The kids don't get the benefit of the child support from the separated spouse.
Right.
So, you know, to us, it's a win-win all the way around. We help the state, we keep people out of the house of correction, and most importantly, we're helping the community spouse and the child get this money that they would have never gotten. And we don't have a debtor's prison. Which you're exactly right, Representative Harrington. That's exactly what I saw as a major problem is the court sending people to jail because they don't have a job. And that went out with England, you know, when, you know, I'm sorry, I get fired up. I love this program. This is my favorite program of all the stuff we do.
Good thing you told us that, Ray. We didn't catch that.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I get that.
All right.
Chris, could you grab your water, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Are there any specific questions about?
The drug court.
Do we want to do 6103 or 6105? 6103 is the visitation center in Scott Hampton. His daughter is an athlete, volleyball, and so they're on an airplane out of Florida to play in a tournament. So he sent me a statement to read on his behalf, and it's brief. I'm happy to do that.
Please.
Okay. So keep in mind that this program is 100% grant funded. For the last 10 years, Stratford County has received federal funding to operate our supervised visitation center at 130 Central Ave in Dover. It has also funded our provider training to a wide range of professionals who deal with domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and child abuse in the context of custody and visitation. The project has always been 100% grant funded, requiring no contributions from either the county or the families who utilize the service. Historically, there have been as many as 8 centers throughout the state, one by one, and for a number of reasons, all the other centers have closed, leaving Stratford County as the only remaining center. The budget is pretty straightforward. The 4 major expenses are staffing support for our collaboration with New Hampshire legal assistance, training, and rent. Staffing includes a project coordinator, who's Scott, who oversees all the operations, 2 visitation monitors who are part-time, who supervise all the visits, and 1 deputy sheriff who's on duty to make sure that the families are safe during the visits. There are no proposed changes to the staffing patterns for the upcoming year. Funding for the New Hampshire legal assistance covers services that offer domestic violence survivors who are also utilizing this visitation center. It covers their participation in offering training to other professionals. There are no other proposed changes to that participation in the upcoming year. They do ask for $4,000 that's mandated training through the grant that is paid for through the grant. The only other major expense is rent, which is budgeted $32,400 for the upcoming year. The grant is due to end October 1st of this year, but we will have extra money that'll get us through this fiscal year. And then for 24, we're hoping to secure another grant. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to relay that information to Scott.
Representative.
Just on the 100% grant fund, is there a cap on that? Or is it, you just pay what you budget for?
Yeah, what we budgeted for, what we initially applied for. So I don't have the exact number in front of me. It's actually probably in the back of the book, right? Right?
I don't think I have to dig out the grant to get the actual number.
Yeah.
I know that the budgeted amount is less than the actual number that they've allocated for us, because the grant period never lines up. You know, it never lines up with January 1st to December 31st like our budget does. So, it's in excess of what you see, but the period of time goes differently also. Plus, if there's a staff change and you lose somebody, then you have some extra money that you can apply to elongate the grant. Because you haven't spent the whole amount of money. So last year, or when we got the grant, it was a 2-year extension.
It was a 2-year extension.
So we'll be applying again. Now, remember, this is a grant that started when the Superior Court judge came down and saw the commissioners and said, hey, we need this program. We have families that, we're not well managing their domestic situation and the visitation situation. It's just caused more crime. It's caused more impact on the kids, seeing their parents argue, their estranged parents argue. And so we applied for the grant, not really knowing if we were going to get it. And we've been fortunate enough, again, we're the last ones, but we have every reason to believe it'll continue. As you know, it had a dire consequence in Manchester. And they gave up and which is one of the reasons why we have a deputy involved. Just in case somebody was shot and killed, as a result of that program. So, or not as a result of it, but while they
Probably would have happened someplace else.
That's right.
Really.
Yeah, but that's why we have a deputy.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
6105 is drug court. Out of this budget, just shy of $490,000 are grant funds through the state. You will see that the training line, again, that's something that the state mandates that folks attend trainings, and our county attorney sits on the drug court team as well. And these trainings are very important because it makes us keep on up to speed on best practices. And we are touted as one of the best drug courts in the state of New Hampshire. We were the first, and I'd like to think that we're still right up there in contention.
I think you'd find the number of people that we have in our drug court I hate to say this, exceeds the other 9 counties combined. How many people now, Carrie, are involved in drug court?
Right now, we have, let's see, 74.
So, I think that's more than all the other 9 counties combined.
Representative Harrington.
Yeah, every day you put on the news, you turn on the TV, anything, more people dying. Now it's not fentanyl, it's fentanyl and some kind of a horse tranquilizer or something that Narcan doesn't work on. We keep throwing money at these things over and over again and get very limited, if any, success. This is one program that seems to work. Is it worth spending more money on this? I mean, you'll never hear me say that very often, right? But
I was writing it down actually. With the date and
but I
time.
mean, it works.
Yeah, that's.
Billions that we're spending on stuff that seems to have little or no results. It should be a program that we should look expanding, or is it basically we're capturing the number of, because it's obviously voluntary. I mean, you can't make people go through this part of it. Are we just capturing about 100% of what's out there? Or if the program was bigger, would we have more participants?
Well, we haven't turned people away, and Tom might be able to answer that question. You sort of see the gamut of all of the drug charges in the county and.
Yeah, as a clinical program, there's a very precise sector of the population that we're supposed to be capturing. So one thing, Representative Harrington, that we've always discussed is, could we be adding another track? So the population that Carrie and I used to be teammates on this program 1,000 years ago, not to give away our age.
Yeah, right.
High risk, high need. So they need a lot of supervision and they need a lot of treatment. What if you were able to have meaningful intervention into the lives of people who are high risk and low need, or vice versa? So maybe they need some supervision, or maybe they need a lot of treatment, but they have the wherewithal to check in. What if we had these different tracks? You don't want to mix your populations. The sicker people, by analogy, make the well people sicker. The well people don't make the sick people better. So you got to keep them separate, but that's something that we've discussed for years, capturing more people into a program that now has a decade plus of proven success.
But the option here is for the people that don't go through this route, they end up going to jail.
They're doing it on their own and probably failing. or they're doing it through Department of Corrections, which is vastly understaffed and under-resourced and failing.
But this keeps them out of jail if they go through this program. I mean, that's
If,
the
if
whole
they
thing.
successfully go.
If they successfully go.
And it gives them a chance
But
to
then a
have
pretty
their.
good incentive beyond
personal.
the improvement of quality of life.
The old care.
I don't want to have to go visit Chris every day, you know, so.
The other thing, do we still do misdemeanors too, Carrie?
We do.
One of the things that we expanded from this originally started with a federal grant. And the federal grant had some really strict rules that made it impossible for our numbers to climb. You know, we were in the 20s and 30s back then, having to comply with the federal requirements, or we didn't get the money. So we followed the money. But once the federal money stopped, for a couple of years, the county funded it, and now you all fund it. Thank you very much, you know, through an act of the legislature. I'm sorry?
The taxpayers.
I was giving you guys credit as representing the taxpayers. So you funded the vast majority of our drug court budget. But it's allowed us to expand the services. Like you couldn't take any violent people at the beginning.
Right, so remember, if you remember, right, second degree assault, all those things that under the statute, we couldn't take back then.
So now we have expanded it on our own. The other thing we've done is created a misdemeanor, because it used to be felonies only. We've created a misdemeanor drug court too. So we have done some of the track work that Tom's talking about. You know, but we don't want a Mike Dukakis. You know, that's what I keep saying all the time on all these programs. For those of you, you know, that are old like me, remember when Mike Dukakis ran for president and he got constantly beat over the head by releasing that person who went out and killed somebody. You know, we work really hard not to have a Mike Dukakis. And sometimes it you know, we think in the back of our mind, do we really want to take the chance with this person? You know, is this person, you know, could this one failure really hurt, you know, the hundreds of people that have been successful on community release, as well as drug court, as well as the employability program, as everything else. So I always warn committees when I talk to them, we've never had a Mike Dukakis. I can't tell you that we never will have one. But I think we're building up, we continue to build up the concept that we've had so many successes. And then it doesn't mean everybody that goes to drug court passes. You know, some fail and end up in prison.
And come out as a parolee and do it again. We've had people do the
But I
program
guess my
multiple
point is
times.
that I understand that there's going to be failures, because otherwise, why would be nothing to the program if everybody passed. But it just maybe we should be making sure that if we don't turn down people because of lack of funding in the program, because those people are going to end up costing us more money one way or the other.
One thing that, and a point well taken, I've maintained a pretty significant friendship with Dave Bennett, who you might remember. You know, who advised us at the beginning when we did these programs. I'll reach out to him. In fact, he just sent me an email this morning bragging about how much snow they have in Utah. I'll reach out to him and see if there's been any national trends towards looking at different tracks and see what he has to say and see if there's something that we can look at possibly employing. I'll reach out to him this weekend.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know whether any of us were part of it. I know I was, but we had a presentation in House Finance. They weren't there, but that's where it was held. And we had some professor up from Pennsylvania, maybe. There, you probably know, Tina Netto was there, and a bunch of people, and we went through a lot of, we showed when you said, you know, or no, Tom said, you know, you put good people together with bad people, the bad people make the good people worse. But you know, it doesn't work the other way around. The good people don't make the bad people less bad. And so all of that, some of that stuff is very counterintuitive in terms of mixing or not mixing and so forth, but it was very, very informative. And we ought to do that again because it educated a lot of people in terms of what we can do, vis-a-vis what we are doing and so forth. So we're either gonna get smarter or we're gonna get dumber, one of the two.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, transitional housing. So.
So transitional housing. Trend we have noticed over the past 2 years is that our average lengths of stay in our transitional housing has grown significantly.
Grown.
Yes, so people are staying longer because they're not finding other affordable places in the community to transition to. We're not necessarily turning people away, but it's, we're definitely having to be more creative about where we're putting people.
When when you can't find a place to rent, 1 bedroom to rent for under $2,000 a month, it's hard for them to make the amount of money, in their jobs, considering some of these people have never worked before. They've never had a gainful employment and, because other things, crime, drugs have been their life. And they've never been able to hold a steady job for them to afford, which goes back to affordable housing. It makes it difficult. So that's why people are staying a little longer.
And this is another important feeder program for drug court, mental health court, bail supervision, for folks to come out so they have a place, they can get out of jail and have a place, sober, stable living environment to complete these therapeutic programs. In the budget, again, it's the staff costs have gone up a little bit because of the cost of living, and then the cost of goods, as in everyone's budget, our supply line has gone up minimally. But, we do have to buy towels, silverware, things that folks have to use to live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just bring us to the,
You're done.
I would just like to say, as the newly appointed chair, thank you so very much. I've been here for 6 years, it's at my 7th. And all of you people here, except I don't know about you, have you been here? This is my first year. Okay.
The first year is presenting.
And I just want to say thank you very much. You are all awesome. You do wonders. It's incredible. And I know the budget process is a pain in the butt sometimes, but something that has to be done. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Can I just mention one quick thing?
Sure.
Representative Harrington frequently emails me or asks me about some pending legislation.
You don't want that to happen no more?
I actually really like it. But more importantly, he always says, I'll always ask, doesn't mean we'll always agree. But historically, I've learned a tremendous amount from Representative Harrington's questions. And I just want him to publicly know that I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Because they're thoughtful. And like he said, we won't always agree, but they're thoughtful and they have a meaning behind them. And I never have the opportunity to say this, so I wanted to say it now and to your face, that I appreciate it.
You're doing my job.
Well,
That's why we get paid to be back.
yeah, that's right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand that.
That is for a minute, we get paid more here. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to, Peter, we move on to make a motion, right, to accept, correct?
That would be
That's the way it usually goes.
that's the way it usually goes, is you look for somebody to make a motion to accept the commissioner's proposal on the accounts you've reviewed.
But that means. Okay. Okay. Motion by Representative Hogan and seconded by Representative Howard to accept the proposed budget. For the criminal justice part of this budget. So do we take a roll? Do we?
No, just all in favor. Remember this, this is a recommendation
So
to the
all in
executive
favor?
committee.
Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank
If you ever have any
you.
questions, your constituents have any questions,